If you think she fell in love with you in Pattaya, you didn't understand the situation you were in. That's not an insult. It's a diagnosis. Because what happened there didn't just happen to you. You participated in it. I had originally planned to move on to a new topic, but I felt that this required another part. Part 1 explained why this felt real. This part explains why it never was. And this is where most men stop listening. Because clarity costs more than fantasy. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. The illusion in Pattaya is mutual. Men participate just as much in the illusion as the women do. You thought you were building intimacy. She was managing outcomes. You experienced emotion. She experienced positioning. That difference matters. Because while you were asking yourself, why does this feel so intense? She was asking herself something very different. Not do I like him, but can he stay? Can he provide consistency? Can he absorb uncertainty? Can he tolerate ambiguity without demanding clarity? Can he be relied on without being managed daily? You weren't chosen because of destiny. You were sorted based on what she needed at that time. On any given month, a bargirl interacts with hundreds of men. This is not hyperbole. A decent-looking bargirl can interact with a dozen to 20 men in one day. This obviously does not include sex, but sometimes it does. And guess what? Many of them were more handsome than you are. Some of them were richer. Some of them were funnier and more fun to be around. Some of them had an 8-pack and were packing a huge cock. For a bargirl, these things are a dime a dozen. In places like Pattaya, men aren't pursued randomly. They're filtered. And they're not filtered by things that men often assume. They are filtered by emotional availability, filtered by generosity, filtered by loneliness disguised as openness, filtered by stability, filtered by optimism, especially optimism. The man who says, I know the risks, but this one feels different, is already in the funnel. Because confidence plus denial is the easiest combination to work with. Here's the kicker. You weren't special. You were suitable. And unfortunately for the man, suitability feels a lot like destiny when you're inside it. Now let's talk about the man Pattaya works best on. Not the naive tourist, not the reckless drunk. The man Pattaya eats alive is more specific. He's usually competent. He's often kind. He's frequently successful in structured environments. He usually divorced or widowed, almost always emotionally starved by routine and made to feel invisible back home. This type of man often prides himself on being perceptive. He believes he's different from those other guys who go to Soy 6 or Bangla Road. And that belief is the crack that everything else slides through. Not because he's chasing sex, but because he's chasing recognition. And the problem isn't that he doesn't receive it. The problem is that Pattaya gives it instantly, but that attention comes with strings attached. Which brings us to the part men cling to hardest. She wasn't like the others. I hate when I hear men say this because it is so fundamentally untrue that if the speaker knew the truth his head would spin. The truth is she just met you in an environment designed to amplify contrast. Here's the harsh reality that many men don't want to face. You didn't meet her at a grocery store. You didn't meet her in daylight with friction and consequence. You met her in a dopamine furnace. Neon lights, music, alcohol, scarcity, competition. Everything is louder there, including emotion. That's why intensity is so often mistaken for depth. Depth usually takes time to form, and time doesn't sell drinks. The urgency of the interaction is mistaken for intimacy because restraint feels boring when stimulation is everywhere. Chemistry under artificial conditions does not generalize. What felt rare wasn't her. It was the environment. Here, where this gets harder to hear, she may have liked you. She may even have cared in the way that she is able to care. But none of that requires exclusivity in a bargirl's mind. Affection is cheap in high-turnover economies, and commitment is expensive. Warmth is not loyalty. Attention is not priority. Comfort is not sacrifice. Men confuse access to her emotions with access to her life. They are not the same thing. You were allowed into one room. Then you assumed the house was yours. And when cracks inevitably start to show, this is where men make their final mistake. They stay, not because they're stupid, but because leaving means admitting something they're not ready to face. Leaving means admitting the magic was situational. Leaving collapses the version of themselves that felt alive there. Leaving sends them back to a life that feels quieter, flatter, less forgiving. Let's face it, most men aren't afraid of losing her. They're afraid of losing the man they became around her. That's the hook. And guess what? The bar girls know this too. That's why they stoke your ego. If you're fat, they love fat men. If you're bald, they admit they've always had a thing for bald men. If you're hairy, they say it's cute. So let's say this cleanly. Pattaya didn't trick you. It revealed what you wanted badly enough to suspend structure. You wanted to feel chosen without scrutiny, desired without earning, important without history, and the system delivered. Not in a malicious way, just efficiently. This isn't about heroes and villains either. It's about incentives. She didn't wake up thinking, how do I destroy this man? She woke up thinking, how do I survive, optimize, and reduce risk? You woke up thinking, what does this mean? Those questions don't meet. And that intersection point is where many men get used and broken. Here's the sentence that ends the fantasy. If something only works in one environment, it isn't real, it's conditional. If the connection fades when structure returns, it wasn't depth, it was stimulation. If clarity only exists when you don't ask questions, it wasn't trust, it was tolerance. If peace requires ignorance, it isn't peace, it's sedation. This is where men usually want reassurance. You won't get it here. This channel is always going to deliver the truth raw and unfiltered. But I also want to be fair to both sides on all topics. But here's the thing. You didn't lose love. You lost an illusion you actively helped sustain. That doesn't make you weak, but pretending otherwise will keep you stuck. Clarity hurts once, but illusion will drain you slowly. In the end, if you hold on to the illusion, the hurt will be 100 times worse. If this made you uncomfortable, good. That's where honesty starts. Comment if you've lived it. Subscribe if you want truth without sedation. Because the moment places like Pattaya stop feeling magical is the moment you get your agency back.